You're listening to the Light Over Time podcast with David Sargent and Korey Bartos. It is October 13th, 2024. This is our 42nd episode. And a lot has happened. A lot is going to happen. And it's going to be a little chaotic, but we're going to kind of go over a couple of topics, mostly around our experience in the first week or so of having the 28 to 105 from Sigma. I have some feelings and some thoughts. I also had rented the A1 and the 51.2 during this time, and
you did that too.
Yeah, and David has been up to a decent amount of shooting, so we're gonna get over We're gonna go over some of these topics, and hope you enjoy. How are you, David?
I'm great. Finally caught up on a little sleep. Really needed after a couple wild nights. But yes, we got a lot to get into. I will say, and I was saying this to Lisa yesterday, that I feel like since like the beginning of September that I've shot more between then and now than I have in like the last year, like total. And I know I've had a lot of other things going on, but it feels really good to be like going out constantly.
Oh yeah. Well, before we get into all of that, we are shooting this on Sunday morning, which is unlike what we've been doing in the last handful of episodes. So I'd like to know what kind of coffee you're drinking.
Oh, yeah. Actually, so today it is coffee produced by Fireside. They're out of Swartz Creek, Michigan. Okay. It's a light roast Costa Rica, warm and buttery and like spiced. I would say it's similar to our Harbor Girl at Dead River Coffee. And it's nice. It's really inviting. I made it on the AeroPress, and it's pretty simple stuff, but I like it.
Word. I kind of reverted in coffee drinking in the last few months. I got really bored of most coffee places having kind of the same exact origins. I kind of feel, maybe you could have some insight on this, but I feel like there's like a Honduras, a Peru, a Costa Rica, and a Colombia, and then like two Ethiopias that like every coffee company is roasting right now. Maybe there's just a lot of it. Maybe it's just like it's objectively good, so it's really easy and forgiving or something. But I see them at like every coffee shop. I've tried them from every coffee shop. But so I've been experimenting with blends. This is a Starship blend from Strange Matter. And I have no idea what the blend is because they don't say, but it was roasted nice and light, and it tastes good. And V60 vibes, and yeah.
Very cool. I can offer a little bit of insight. Honduras has been a breakout region for coffee in the last few years, like nobody's ever seen. They're producing some really incredible stuff. They're not scared to experiment with honey process to the fullest degree. So you're seeing all kinds of things come out of Honduras. They're a mid-altitude region too, so you can get anything in the spectrum of like, earthy and or tea-like and floral and sweet and salty and all of the range of tastes you could imagine from coffee. Mid-altitude regions like Honduras are great for seeing what kind of flexibility those regions have with coffee, because processing can do a whole lot. A washed coffee from Honduras I've had taste like black tea before, and then you get a honey process that tastes like raspberry, and you get a natural process that tastes like lemon. It's all over the place with them. So they're an awesome one. Even if you do see it all over and you're kind of bored of seeing the origin, just try it, because Honduras is all over the place.
I mean, I think as early as end of last year, I was already talking about it was some of my favorite coffee was Honduras roasts. But they were popping up and I was getting them. There's like I think it's a woman-owned farm that Strange Matter gets their Honduras from. It's a very good coffee. I've had probably 4 bags of it. I've had 2 Honduras or 3 Honduras, I think, from Hyperion. I think they did one at Factory. I've tried a bunch. I'll be picking up some coffee when I'm up there this week, which is going to be pretty crazy and exciting. But
nice.
So I'll finally have a couple bags of Dead River to chew through and let you know what I think.
Yeah, November 1, Bob's Deer Camp Blend, which is like an annual return thing for like hunting season and stuff, will have Honduras in it. It won't be singly Honduras. It'll be a blend of Brazil and Honduras. So like instead of the Honduras that we had just being like super vibrantly raspberry, it'll be with Brazil that's really nutty, like roasted peanuts. So it'll be nutty, with some nice milk chocolate raspberry stuff going on. So it'll be sweet, nutty. We've tested it. It's good to go. We're going to start roasting it probably next week or week after.
Nice. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
But anyway, for the coffee nerds out there, there's a little fun insight. We used to do that. If you haven't seen our earlier episodes, every single time we would shoot, we would talk about the coffee we were drinking, especially when David was still doing David Sargent coffee by himself.
Oh, yeah.
So good times. But how do we want to swing into some of these topics? So we both rented, as you might know from the last episode, the 28 to 105. We have received our 28 to 105s. We have shot a decent amount on our 28 to 105s. So do you just want to go like first impressions?
Yeah.
And then we can work in like, I'll go into my experience from the lab shoot, and then we can go into your stuff.
Sure. Let's do that.
Sweet. What was the unboxing experience, the first couple of tests? What was going through your head?
So that day, I remember I had to be in Gladstone to deliver some coffee to Super Bloom. It's a nice little coffee house down there that we wholesale to. And I wasn't supposed to get the lens until Monday, but it was a Saturday, and FedEx texted me saying, your signature's required and your package is out for delivery. So I'm like, great. I'm an hour and a half away from home. So I had to run home. I made it within 5 minutes of the beginning of the window of when FedEx would come. But of course, they didn't deliver until like half an hour after the end of the window, whatever. Anyway, I get the package. It's beat to hell like FedEx likes to do, but inside it was nice and packaged well, like Sigma always does. And I took it out. I immediately went, well, this is a nice chungus, hefty, but well-built feeling lens. This thing feels significant. And it doesn't feel too different from like the build quality I know from the 150 to 600. Everything is there that I hoped and expected that it would feel like when I took it out of the box. So I immediately put it on the camera and kind of just took it with me. I didn't do a serious shoot with it until, I think I took it out that evening actually. But the first impressions of, let's say, that night was really positive. I think I even did a reel at the end of that evening just to be like, okay, I'm out here. I took a couple shots in the woods. I did some woodland photography. Fall colors were just starting to really pop a little bit. And the first things I noticed, at least on the back of the screen, were it's a pretty sharp lens everywhere you shoot it. 28 in the middle, all the way to 105. I was really impressed at 2.8. It looks great everywhere. I shot it down to f16 at some times just to like test things out. Diffraction at f16 is a thing of the past, it seems. Things are really well controlled all over. So my first impressions are extremely positive, but I'm beyond first impressions now. I've shot so much with it in the last month. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Very similar. I was unfortunate. I work from home on Mondays generally, and it delivered on Monday, and I just had to wait patiently. But I was busy enough kind of playing with the 51.2 and the A1. The debrief on that is pretty simple. I really missed the high megapixels, which will be kind of a little backwards when I start talking about me using the 28 to 105 because I've been shooting a lot of photos on my A7S III, which is the opposite. But just instantly happy with the fact that I have big images again, which is making me reconsider an A7R, A7CR or an A7R5. But I digress. The 50 is great. It's hefty. It's bigger than I'd care to carry around all the time. I know that because I'm shooting on my 24 right now. I have the 24 G Master again, and I obviously was running the 35. I learned I don't necessarily care that much about 50 over 35. I don't really care about 1.2. It's so subtle that it just wasn't really that big of a deal for me. It's a super sharp lens. It's super great, but like literally the heft, which is also funny because we're talking about the 28 to 105, it's just enough that like that's a 50, man.
Yeah,
like,
it's heft without being versatile, right? Like
right, like
it does
and
one thing.
How long did I have the Canon 51.8 and the 51.4 USM? Sure. Like I used those for 8 years or something like that, and like that's my idea of a 50. It's like the lens you chuck in your bag so you make sure you have low light and you make sure you have like really shallow depth of field in a pinch if you just need like I want to take a portrait or like a little product shot or something. And it's like a utility for me, not being a portrait photographer where like I'm living on a 50, or like I don't know who else might do that, but somebody doing sessions for like cars or something like that, I could see that being a really useful tool. But
Yeah.
as far as like I live on a zoom of some kind and then I switch over to primes for certain things, I guess I unsurprisingly wasn't that satisfied with it. Like it's not a $2,000 lens to me. And it is to some people. I'm not saying that it's a bad lens or anything
Right.
like that. It just doesn't have the utility for me to warrant getting.
Right.
It made me want the 35-1.4 again. Getting just a little wider, especially when you have 50 megapixels. When I want that 50 field of view, that's barely punching in for a 50 megapixel sensor, let alone a 60 megapixel sensor. So, you know, you can get 50 off a 35 super fast. It's still shallow. The 50 field of view for portraits, especially, actually isn't that nice to me because I use my 70 to 200 for portraits. That's like what I'm used to using.
Sure.
It's super sharp. I like that like 135. And so I guess I'll just roll right into like the first actual time I'm shooting with it. So I take the 50 A1, my A7S3, the 28 to 105, all to this place called the Lab. It's a training center. I think I've brought it up before in a short, but there was like a sniper school. And so there's a handful of guys doing some sniper stuff. We get to just like sit in on the class. I learned a lot of cool things. It was sweet. But I kind of was bouncing between the two. I did some product shots for one of our products that's going to come out next year. I did just some normal kind of content that I would do for JagerWorks, but I would go between 51.2 and 105 f2.8.
Yeah.
And because of like solely the compression at 105, it's more useful to me most of the time. And you're not getting this same bokeh or anything like that. I'm not gonna say 105 2.8's perfect because I still like fast lenses. I like 24 1.4, I like 35 1.4, but it wasn't enough that like I couldn't nail those shots and get beautiful blurry backgrounds on a close-up product whenever I needed to with this
Right.
28 to 105. So I guess it was kind of a blessing that I got the lens while trialing that lens, because if I hadn't, maybe I would still try to buy it later just to test it and go, oh, I'm bored. Why did I buy this? Now the 51.4, if you like 50, that the difference is so little. Like
Right.
the bokeh is super round, but it's like not even low light is not the reason to get 1.2. If you're doing eyes, you're still gonna have to. It's gonna go back to like before we had eye autofocus. That's how hard it is to perfectly get the eye.
Yeah.
Because even if you get the actual eye, you probably miss the freaking iris or the pupil,
Right.
and it still
You
kind
get
of looks.
eyelash or something
Well,
right near it.
It's good enough that like you're not getting eyelash like you would on like a DSLR all the time.
Okay.
But it's so shallow that if it hits the white of the eye, your pupil's out of focus or your
Oh,
iris is out of
wow.
focus, and you're like, especially if you get pretty close,
Yeah.
you have to back off a decent bit. And then like the test shots I showed you, which I'll probably put up. I did kind of the same shot of me in my studio at 50 and at 105, or actually it was 100 at f2.8 for that shot. And I like the compression for a
Yeah.
portrait better at 105. 50 almost feels wide when you compare the two. So like your background kind of goes away, and which again is like, that's what some people want, but that's not what I like. I like to have the bokeh be a part of the photo. I don't want to just blow it out into oblivion. If I wanted to do that, I'd shoot everything super close up on a Helios where
Sure.
it would just turn into swirly garbage. But yeah, so it was just super interesting to spend most of that week just comparing those two lenses, shooting a ton in the shop, shooting a bunch in my office, shooting the sniper school where it was like basically these Connex boxes all set up as like a tower. So there's like a 60-foot rappelling tower off of it and all these ports that you can open up and shoot out of out to 700 yards. And so we were shooting outside, and then we would go inside where it was super dark and then really bright where the Connex boxes opened up. And it performed really well. The A1 performed super well. The A1's eye autofocus is so much better than the A7 IV. in terms
sure.
of like it has to be that sensor size or something. I imagine that the A7CR and the A7R5 is probably similar, but there's something about you can get way further away and have your subject way smaller in the frame, and it's like that's the eye, which like I don't ever have an issue with the A7 IV by any means. I think it's beautiful and it works exactly how I need it to, but I was surprised at when it would get somebody's eye. I was like, you didn't have to do that, but thanks. Like, it's like that was sick.
It's a speculation, but I just wonder if they had some early AI like algorithms built on the chip that existed then, that they then ported over to a dedicated chip that we see now today in the newer cameras. So I'm curious because it does seem to me to be a significant difference too. Yeah, I've seen some stuff.
Yeah, and really, it should be. It was a $6,000 camera or whatever,
absolutely.
And it was their absolute flagship. So it would make sense that they have the horsepower in it to do it, and it works really well. I was really impressed. I love the camera. Instantly missed the A7R5 A9 III flip screen though.
Sure.
Going back to just the flip up was brutal, but I do love the flip up. So the A9 III setup is so good. I hope they do that with the rest of their cameras. If you haven't had a chance to use it, it's pretty brilliant. But I guess the last thing, I'll kind of go to the beginning again really quick. The very first thing I did was put the 28 to 105 on my A7S III and tested breathing at 28 and 105.
Yeah.
So I always talk about how important breathing is to me, and it's just like residual from learning video, and it bugs the hell out of me when it's really bad because I used to only shoot on lenses that were really bad at it. And every time I would see it, it just looks so amateur to me unless it's anamorphic where you expect it to move a lot.
Sure.
And so I was kind of a stickler for going G and GM because obviously the breathing compensation. I complained about it for the A7S III for like 30 episodes. And it's so well controlled. It's not to a degree that like any of the shots that I pull focus on like that, there's often movement, so it's not as big of a deal anyway. But even if you had to like hard throw from like really minimum focus to like really infinity on sticks, it would still be barely noticeable.
Good.
At pretty much the whole focal length range. So that was super dope. That was like the main thing I was concerned about. I trusted the reviews on how sharp it was. I trusted the reviews on how the autofocus performance and everything was. It's so good now that like I don't care.
Yeah.
There's nothing that I'm doing with this lens that I need it to be like the fastest autofocus. Like if that's what I'm doing, I probably have the 70 to 200 or something. Like that's a fringe case for me.
Yeah.
So just, and with my A7S III anyway, the focusing algorithms are kind of set up more cinematic or whatever, where like it's not doing fast like sports autofocusing. It's doing really comfortable throws whenever things coming in and out of focus. So for this setup, which I can shoot like my whole life on this, if I have an A7S III in this lens, I really don't need anything else. If you can't get it done with this, you can't get it done.
Would you say we're kind of like in the early days of it, and it's nice to have right now, but would you say down the road it would be a hard lens for you to get rid of?
I would get rid of most of my other lenses before I get rid of this.
Yeah. Wow.
I literally can shoot everything with this. It's so like unless I had an A9 or something where I like really needed that autofocus, where I was doing like stuff all the time and I relied on having 30 frames a second continuous autofocus and stuff, I guess, but I don't, and I just don't care. And I'm not going to shoot birds with it. It's going to be like a pretty standard. Oh, and the manual focus is pretty comfy.
Yeah.
It's not perfect, but it's not outside of usable or anything for what I'm used to using photography lenses as video lenses for manual. It's pretty great, and it's beyond the like honeymoon phase, I think, at this point, because I've done enough with it that it's almost boring to me now. Because I'm like, it's perfect. I don't need anything else. Like I can take that. Oh, I have a video gig. Let me grab the 28 to 105 and the A7S III. I got it.
I can speak to that a little bit. I was actually going to mention that. This lens, I am so glad that I have gone my entire shooting career not buying a 24 to 70, because that's the most boring lens I think we both agree to ever have to buy. And I see, people like Thomas Heaton and all these people that do YouTube photography channels, are using 24 to 70s for landscapes often. And I just have always defaulted to 20, 50. It's just so natural for me to like switch lenses if I have to and just find a way it works for those lenses. But you don't always want to have to rely on that. I've gotten pretty good at it. This lens, 28 to 105, serves so many purposes inside of landscape photography. It is just absolutely gold for that stuff. So yes, while it's perfect enough to be boring, it is so useful, and I'm just so glad I never bought a 24 to 70.
Yeah. I mean, this is crazy because there's no chance you see me getting a GM2 24 to 70 over this thing. I don't care that it's chunky. If you care about that, then like, yeah, I mean, honestly, go get the 28 to 70 that Sigma has, because I use that all the time at work and it's really good.
Sure.
But dude, it's like, it's so legendary to have as sharp as my GM stuff, as like good autofocus as my GM stuff to a degree. And then to like the CA is super well controlled. Like the contrast is nice. I don't really see any like downsides to being wide or telephoto with it. Like it's pretty consistent across the entire focal length range, which is nuts. Like, where was the compromise? What, did the world actually end in 2012 and I'm still in my like, brain chemical dump fever dream as I'm ascending into the the afterlife? Because this doesn't make sense. Like it's super, super good and it's $1,500.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna stop seeing people using first party stuff unless they have just a ton of money. Like Jared Polin always says, I'm gonna have the best of the best with Honor Sir because I can, and I'm making, he's shooting the Phillies and he's shooting like all this stuff, like all these big concerts, things like that. Yeah, why not just get the best one? Because it's gonna function the best. But like, that's not most photographers.
Right.
You're gonna see people kitting out Sigma stuff. I'm still interested in their 16 to 28 now, because that's like, if I want to I have a 14, I have a 24, I have a 28 to 105, a 70 to 200, and a 200 to 600. It's like, I don't have anything lacking.
Yeah.
An ultra wide zoom would be nice for some stuff, but it's definitely not needed. It's awesome. It's really validating to have spent a pre-order on something that turned out to be epic.
Yeah, absolutely. I am almost always the type to wait for reviews from people who did not get the thing early.
Yeah.
And in this case, I just had a lot of trust in the experience I've had personally with Sigmas in the last few years. So I felt good about it. And like you said, just happy that it turned out great.
Yeah, they did not disappoint. They crushed that. I still hardly can believe that they did that. But my trials and tribulations aren't over. We'll see what happens with Sony bodies coming up, and if I decide to just say screw it and get a A7R5. It's funny, now that I've been shooting the A7S III again for most of my stuff, I don't really want a camera for anything right now, which is great. I'm over the I need a new camera.
Sure.
Because I'm just pretty happy. Like there's not going to be video specs that I require, basically, which is epic. Like the A7S III is still a perfect video camera. Again, if I can't get it done with that, then I need to stop.
Mm-hmm.
I need to just own up to being a gear W and just live my life and say, oh no, I'm just a camera enthusiast. I'm not a photographer or a videographer. But yeah, anyway, you have a bunch of series of things. I'm stoked to actually hear them. We haven't really been able to touch base very much. Like we got the footnotes of a couple of things, but we're planning for me to come up, and it's been chaotic on my end. So let's hear it.
Yeah, I'll so I had two first days that I considered my first impressions experiences with the 28-105. We talked about the first in the woods. I'll go on to the next one. The next day, I believe it was, I went over to Prescott Park, Black Rocks in Marquette. Very popular shooting spot, popular hangout spot in general. People jump off Black Rocks to, swim in the lake, whatever. This particular evening, the lake was kind of crazy. So there was lots of crashing waves. I knew I would probably want to be doing some long exposure stuff. So yeah, 28-105 stuck on the body the entire time. And also in the back of my mind, I was keeping tabs of how many times I may have felt like wanting to switch out of that lens for something else. And the only times would be when I saw a bird. So
Right.
out of all of my experiences, just it's been like, no, I never wanted 50-1.4. No, I never really wanted 20. Okay, there was like one time where I did want the 21.8, but for like just straight landscape stuff, incredible. So that night, I get out on Black Rocks, not a cloud in the sky, and it's just incredible. I've shot there plenty of times back in 2015 and 16. Obviously now I know more. The gear's a little bit better. My approaches are a little bit different. I'm a little bit more, I think, like intentional, but stuff I was thinking about then. But I do feel like I made some very different work that night. I haven't had time to post hardly anything because I'm shooting and editing so much, but lots of like, black rocks. That's what it's called. So lots of like dark rocks coated in Lake Superior's water, so like things are looking glossy. There's lots of crevices, so I was using like crevices as leading lines into the lake with like waterfalls crashing over some of the rocks. So lots of long exposures around the, probably, if I have to try to remember, like half a second, maybe a third of a second type stuff, all the way up to like maybe a 10th or a 20th of a second. So in between there, depending on like how fast the water's moving, is where your sweet spot is for your preference of how you want that water to look. And then as the sun went down, the sky got nice and pink and purple and blue like cotton candy. So it turned out to be a really nice night to shoot. So that would be like my second first impressions day, and I had a really, really positive experience. Again, pixel peeping. This was when I was shooting mostly at like anywhere between f11 and f16. The only thing I really learned of value was that I really need to clean my sensor.
Yeah.
Super need to clean my sensor. There's like so many spots, and my buddy Derek messaged me. He sent me a screenshot of my post with, he circled all the dots. He's like, clean your sensor, bud. I'm like, I know, I cloned out those spots in like every other photo and forgot to do the one that I was going to post. So that was crazy. Wonderful.
Dude, it's so brutal. I've been cleaning mine way more and just like meticulously dusting it like crazy because it's been killing me.
Yeah. I dust it all the time, but I clearly need to do like an actual swab or something. Yes, it's stuff I can't see, but you can clearly see it at f16. But anyway, sharp as heck, just everywhere between f11 and f16. You want it to be sharp when you've got jagged edges and you've got texture on the rocks. And then in the sky and in the water, it's not a big deal. But when you're using that foreground, either at like a third of a composition or 2/3 of a composition, that stuff leads you into the rest of the scene. You want it to be nice and sharp, and it was. Did not let me down. And I've got a bunch of other stuff, but I want to check with you if you've got other things you want to bounce back and forth from.
No. I mean, I love that you've been able to so thoroughly shoot it. I haven't as much as you have, but like to reaffirm the utility of the freaking, like, okay, 2.8's awesome.
Yeah.
Your second day you're shooting f11 the whole time. And it's like it's just dope. Like it's the real everything lens,
and not at 28 either. I was at like 45. I was at 70. I was at like 105 for some stuff. I took like a sneaky portrait of this couple that was like watching the lake, and I went over there and after the fact, and I texted them the picture, and they loved it and all that stuff. So yes, versatile. We'll say that word 1,000 times probably today, but that night was wonderful. So I don't know this list I wrote up for you if it's in order or not, but I think the next thing that I remember happening was that I was driving to work one morning, and there's this little pond that I drive by every single day. And in the middle of summer, it's not crazy, like it doesn't catch my eye too much, but I watch it because I like to check to see if there's this sandhill crane that's like there every morning, and it was there this morning. And now the fall colors are starting to pop pretty good. This was, I think, maybe a week ago or so now. So I stopped the car finally. It's been months of me not stopping the car, but I stopped the car and I got out, and this was with the 150 to 600 because the sandhill crane was probably about 100 yards off, just across this pond. and nice mist rolling over this little pond, and it just sat there nicely for me. Some red maples, like a bunch of needle trees behind it, so the red maple stood out really nice. It was just before sunrise, so there was no hard light, I don't think, if I'm remembering that right. So I just got some really nice shots of one sandhill crane across a pond, nice fall color. I did try some different angles where I would stick the front element of the lens right in front of some like browning and yellow leaves and stuff like that to create like the out of focus effect in the foreground. So I got a bunch of shots, probably like 8, maybe 10 different shots I actually edited and put in the keeper folder. I don't remember if I posted one. I might have, but I really, really enjoyed that morning. That was so good to get out and do. And then we had a couple of crazy nights.
Dude, and it was so brutal. So before you get into your end of it,
yeah, go for it.
All I have to say is that Monday was Elle's birthday, and there was nothing on this planet that would have made her happier than if she could just have gotten to see the aurora on her birthday.
I know.
And it was like so close. We like back and forth, and it was like I can't remember because it was a few different nights we tried, and I think that one it was just super cloudy, and there was nothing we could do. And she's been working 6/12s a week right now in ICU, so there's like so no chance. It's like, baby, we have to sleep, or else like the next days are going to be brutal.
Yeah.
But yeah, so go into that section of the Aurora week.
Yeah, it's going to get a little out of order because we had 2 nights of Aurora, and then I did stuff between the 2 nights because there was a couple of days between. But I'll bring it back a few days beforehand, as I usually do. We had the sun throw off in an abnormal amount of solar flares, facing us. Most of those, or maybe half of them, actually produced CMEs. Some of them actually produced CMEs that were faced towards Earth and directed towards Earth, including an X7 and an X9 class flare. And those are very, very significant flares. Both of them produced CMEs. The X7 produced a CME that I believe was not a full halo, but the X9 did produce a full halo. And there was a lot of confusion, actually, and then also after the X9, there were like 20 other CMEs or 20 other flares that produced CMEs just intermittently.
All the like M class flares and stuff. There's like a million of them. It was ridiculous.
And so we as humans have become pretty good at using the satellites and instruments and data that we collect to understand when a solar flare happens and a CME shoots off towards Earth. We can usually track that one CME pretty well to understand how fast it's going and what kind of impact we might expect and when it might get here. But when the sun just goes haywire and does this 20 times, it gets really, really hard to track all of them separately, and data just starts to mingle together. And that's the best explanation for why it seemed to me, or it seemed to everyone, that like when the X7 was supposed to arrive, nothing really happened. And then when the X9 did arrive, it hung around for like 3 days, which is unusual too. But the CMEs can travel through space at different speeds. They come through very fast through space, but this X9 CME seemed to be very large. So it took up more space through space and was coming at us very slowly. And so it seemed as though the X7 was a near miss, maybe because the data was very jumbled. And then like the lower class CMEs that actually spat out after the X9 was faster than the X9 CME. So they actually impacted us before the X9, but also there's like theory or hypothesis that they could have disturbed the X9 CME. They could have, the X9 could have cannibalized, they could have joined together. So those are all hypotheses that are plausible. But regardless, the X9 did eventually hit us. And that was on October 7th and through the night of the 7th into the morning of the 8th. And that was a wonderful night. It was huge. We had just lots of overhead aurora. We had lots in the northern skies. SAR, which is a new term I'm learning, which is like a red band, kind of like the Steve phenomena we've heard about for like 8 years now, but specifically for like a very red band that cuts across the sky in a different way. So if it's very red, this is called an SAR, I guess. This is new to me, but we had that on the night of the 7th, and then it went on for like 3 days, and it was a little bit lessened on the next few days, but it was still very nice. And that was tiring enough. But then we had the sun shoot off another X3 that produced a direct hit CME, which was the night of the 10th. Is that right?
Yep.
Was it? Yeah, the night of the 10th. And that was absolutely mind-blowing. And what I read was that it was the 6th strongest CME impact since 1996, eclipsed only this year by the shows that were early May this year, but very, very close. And it's hard to believe that another show this year was better than that.
Seriously, yeah.
But before I get into that night, you had a pretty cool experience. Why don't you talk about it?
Yeah, so the 3 days of just like epic lights and like seeing it was basically every morning. It was just, oh, cool. Elle gets to start a ICU shift being debilitated by the fact that everybody saw lights again last night. And this was draining the soul out of my body. I was like, oh my gosh. Like I was able to pull it off for May, and it was her first time seeing the lights. And it was basically my first time seeing the lights because it was like so extraordinary that every time I've seen them before was meaningless.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh man. And we like kind of tried. I'm like, it's too cloudy. It's this, it's that, the other thing. We got to make sure we're taking care of you. Like, And then I think it must have been Wednesday when all of the information was kind of coming in, and I was talking to you about it, and she had to see him. And we went over to her sister's on Wednesday night, which I knew, I was like, I don't think, like, everything is saying it's going to be Thursday, Friday. Like, what are we doing? And I think it gets to like 10:30 and there's still nothing. And I was like,
I didn't know you went out that night.
We went out to her sister's, who's north of Lansing. Okay. So in during May and even during the 10th, they could see them outside of their house.
Sure, cool.
So it's like it's dark enough out there that it's visible. So we were kind of just like seeing what we could see. If it was going to pop off, we already had Sleepy Hollow campsites on deck for Wednesday and Thursday.
Got it.
Because once I think the Sleepy Hollow State Park posted something, and as soon as they did that, campsites were just filling up.
Yeah.
So Elle was like, I'm just going to get them for 2 nights because it's relatively cheap to get a rustic site, and we'll just have them in case we decide to go out. And it's like at 10:30, 11 o'clock, and I'm like, the vibes are off. Like, if David had any information to make me think that it's a good idea to stay up, we would still stay up. But there's none of that.
I remember telling you, like, this is not, it's not looking good. Tomorrow's the night.
I couldn't convince her. I was like, all right, I'll try. We'll try for a little bit, but I'm telling you, if it doesn't start popping off or it's not clear, we need to like sleep.
Yeah.
And then we wake up the next day, and basically all the data, all the people posting is already like crazy. Everyone's like, it's going to be the craziest show ever. And it's all she could think about all day. And she was like, we're going. I don't care. I work from home on Thursday, so I was just going to work my day, kind of make sure that I had all my batteries charged and everything like that. And she fortunately got out a little earlier than normal. She got home and I made her nap. I was like, you're going to nap.
Good.
I'm going to keep working for a little bit, and then we can pack up all our stuff and we can go out to Sleepy Hollow. And so she does. She gets like an hour and a half of sleep. I work a little later, and then we roll out. And was it the night before, or it was Tuesday, I think. Yeah, Tuesday when I was driving home, the sunset looked really wild in a way that, like, I was like, this has to be some kind of like phenomenon, because like it's not just a pretty sunset. I think it had something to do with the northern lights were still active like Tuesday, because it was really cool. And when we're driving out to Sleepy Hollow on Thursday, it looked like that again. And I was like, this is what I was talking about. This is the sunset that I saw. Like the last 10 minutes of light, it was like this unreal. It's like when it goes sepia tone during late golden hour, but then it was just like this huge purple and orange that like was just a little bit more brutal than like a normal beautiful sunset.
Yeah.
and we're driving and we're getting amped up, and then we're trying to find our spot. I'm getting a little frustrated because like I've not driven back to the rustic sites. I have no idea where I'm going, and we like need to set up. And so I guess jumping a little forward, I had planned my trip around for next week in Marquette around proposing to Elle.
Yeah.
And Thursday during my work day before Elle came home, I went and picked up the ring.
Yeah.
Fortunately for me, her sister and brother-in-law own a jewelry store and make custom jewelry, and they were the ones making my ring. And it also happened to be her little sister's birthday.
Oh, wow.
So I get the ring and I basically go home and I'm like excited. I take a couple photos of it or whatever. And then I was like, if it pops off tonight and we go to Sleepy Hollow, I should just do it tonight. I should just propose tonight. And I text her sister and I was like, hey, is it like really rude of me to do it on, you know, your sister's birthday? Like, is that like, I don't want to step on any toes.
That's very nice of you to ask.
Yeah, I was like, like it's cute or whatever, but like, man, would that be rude? And she was like, no, absolutely fine. Definitely do that. And
did you tell her the kind of conditions that might pop up for that to be valid?
Oh yeah, we were already talking about it.
Oh,
like,
cool.
Because we were at her house the night before waiting for the lights.
Got it.
So same sister. And all right, so now I'm like, I wasn't like nervous. I wasn't nervous before getting the ring. I got a little nervous when I got the ring, and then I kind of got chilled out. And I was like, okay, let's just hope that this can happen. My plan was setting up time lapses like before. She was used to it because we did a bunch of time lapses where we danced under the northern lights in May. So
yeah.
I can incognito set it all up. And then she invites Bob and Alyssa to come with the 3 kids to the campsite. Which I was cool with because like visitors can't stay late. They're young kids, so they weren't going to be there super late.
Yeah.
But they just wanted to pop off, and it was funny. Her sister was like, sorry to ruin your party. I was like, don't worry about it. It's fine. So I started time lapse. Like I haven't edited it yet, but like it's like the kids running around and it's just like our little campsite and the northern lights are going off. It seems like it's probably going to be pretty cool. And then they leave. We're starting to get set up. It starts to get a little crazy, but I'm like, man, I just really need this to go like, May 11th again. I need it to just start slamming. And we didn't have like the most ideal spot. There's kind of a big tree that was like northeast. So like there was like really good lights to the just northwest, and then there was really good lights, but it spread all the way almost south.
Yeah.
And there was a giant SAR going across the sky for like half of it, and so it starts getting a little crazy. And I'm like, okay, I gotta like change my camera's not facing the right direction. Like it's way cooler over here now.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, and I get it all set up or whatever. And I'm like, hey, can you just stand there for a second? And I'm focusing it. And she's like texting all of her friends. She's like texting like coworkers and stuff. Hey, you have to get out.
Yeah.
You have to like get out. Like, cause she told all these people that she'd let them know. And like, I go over, I had the ring hidden. I have a dry bag that I always keep in my backpack in case I need it for my camera or whatever. And I hid it in there, rolled it, and like just so it was completely hidden in sight. I put it in my hoodie pocket and I go over there and we're like chilling. I'm kind of like waiting for the moment or whatever. And it's going off and my heart is just pounding.
Yeah.
Like, and she brings it up. She's like, wow, your heart is really loud.
Oh, that's funny.
And I was like, yeah, it's super awesome, right? Which is crazy. But yeah, so it kind of starts getting a little crazy. I start to say like some speechy stuff, some things like bringing up May and like how crazy is it that we get 2 once in a lifetime shows and all this stuff. And then I don't know how much of the story that I want to tell, I guess. But I guess I'll go for it and I'll just kind of cut here if I don't want to tell too much. But I do this thing and I think it's really funny where I just like kind of bug her by now where I go, hey, I got a question. It's kind of serious. And I'll just do it randomly. And she's like, and for the first like few months of our relationship, she'd be like, oh, what? And I'd be like, what if we kissed? And it got to the point like now it's so regular that she just knows that it's coming and she usually just like reaches in for a kiss anyway. But I say a couple of things. It starts to get really, really crazy and you can see it with your naked eye.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, I got a question. And she was still looking up at the sky, and she like kind of went in for a kiss or whatever. And I was already like going halfway down on my knee, and she lost her mind. And she had no idea. She had no idea that I was going to do it anytime soon. She had no idea that I had, weeks and weeks before that set up the ring design and everything with her sister to get it made. And it was hilarious. It was like as perfect as you would ever want a proposal to go. She said no, but no.
I don't think so.
But yeah, so it was pretty cool. And we got like a photo that she posted in her story of our hands together with her ring on with like the Northern Lights, and it's super cool. And I have my mother was demanding if I propose that I have to have a photo to send her with me on one knee. And I was like, it's fine. I got David shooting the proposal in Marquette. Like, I'll just make sure that he gets the moment. It'll be fine.
So you had to figure that out yourself.
So I did not bail on my mother. I did get the time lapse. I have the shot. I'll put it up on the screen.
Yeah.
And
I saw that. It was a very nice shot.
Yeah. I did a little Photoshop. There were some posts and stuff I got rid of. But
okay. All right.
just to have it a little bit more Hallmark worthy, because we're gonna print it and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was epic. That was one to have both of those lights days in 1 year is epic. But there's like nothing I could have conceived in my life to make a proposal more special for someone than like this huge buildup of a week of not seeing lights and not seeing lights and not seeing lights, and then like just being ultra tired. And
I'm glad you went for it. If you saw, maybe I'll send this to you later, but there's a graph that's been going around to show the spikes of what like the major impact of CMEs have been in the last like many decades. And it's the 2 this year, and then it's like 15 years where any similar spike is. So that's crazy. I would say once in a lifetime for a lot of people.
Yeah. Again, I mean, the times I've seen it before May were like basically nothing. They were boring by comparison. It was like I hardly could see the lights, and I was using like a 7D Mark II to capture them, and it was like kind of mid. Like so yeah, it was super dope. And it was funny because like my whole day, right, leading up to this, I was just like pounding. I was like, listen, we need to find a good shot. Like everybody's gonna have a million shots of the Northern Lights. I just need to get to like Sleepy Hollow and find something that's cool. I want to have some nice foreground or something. Like, I'm so sick of just seeing like, cool, you have a really nice cell phone shot, because cell phones are amazing now, and like even I got some killer shots on my phone. But I was like, I just need something to be special. Like, I want to come away with a photo. So like me being like borderline insane, like setting up my camera this whole time, she just was like, oh, he just really wants a shot. She's used to me being who I am and a photographer and stuff. Yeah. So I was like, okay. And then I got the shot.
Wonderful.
And my caption, it was commented on a lot. Like, people messaged me about my caption. All it said was, this is the only photo of the Northern Lights I have to post.
Yeah.
And it's pretty good. But yeah, it's fulfilling to give somebody like a fairy tale like moment. It was as epic as you possibly could ever want. And I regret nothing. I am through the freaking moon.
I'm just glad you weren't overly bugged by how often I threw data at you, but you seemed to use it to the perfect opportunity.
No, dude, I needed it. And like, it would just, she was like, she follows a bunch of stuff. She has like Aurora Notify and everything. And I just used that conversation to support trying to set it up and everything like that. So you're my Aurora guy, so like you'll know about it before I do. Like, you're up in Marquette, we're down in Lansing, so it's like, if David's saying it's going, it's going. That's when we try. We don't try if he's like, no, it's mid, bro. It's mid. He will know better than me.
I'll use this as a quick reminder for anyone. If you have like the Aurora app, if it's a KP predictor app, it's garbage. It doesn't know it doesn't know like the nuances of the data enough to make a good prediction. It is decent for general. And if you're the type of person who will take every opportunity, and if 1 in 10 nights you get one good one, great. Use the app. If it gives you any indicator, you might hit. But it's not great to understand, how great a show could be and exact dates either. Anyway, if you don't mind, I'll share my night that
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've been shooting the lights for about a decade now. I recall, and I could have told this story 3 days before these lights, because back in June of 2015, I saw what was an X-Class flared producing CME set of lights, overhead stuff. Downtown Petoskey.
Sick.
Like I was on Mitchell Street, and so maybe not quite downtown. I was over the hill, and then if you get over the hill, there's a little bit of like farmland, and there's these fireflies that I noticed a couple nights before. So all I wanted to do was shoot these fireflies, right? So I got fireflies, and then I noticed the Milky Way was back there. So I was like, "Oh,
where
sick.
were you, man? I was at NCMC in 2015.
I know,
I was
dude.
there.
I know.
I was a block away from you.
I was shooting the Milky Way and the fireflies. I'm like, just that alone was like, oh, this is sick. I love this. And then all of a sudden I see some yellow and green in the Milky Way. I'm like, that is weird. What is going on? I'd never shot the Northern Lights before. I think I'd only ever seen it once years before that, before I was into photography. And so I was like, what the heck? So I start turning the camera and taking pictures, and then all of a sudden I see purple and green everywhere. And so that was like, it was huge. It was like sweeping from northwest to northeast, south, even to the Milky Way. And then I look straight overhead with my eyes, and I see this X cross pattern pulsing, like we've seen the last couple nights, just pounding against it. And I've probably talked about this before, but that was my first experience, right? Best one I'd seen up until October 7th. And October 7th, I think, just outpaced that a little bit. And it was really incredible. And then we got October 10th. And October 10th was something I never thought I could see. Just, I mean, you and I were both experiencing it that night, just like a whole lot of other photographers, because we've all been primed by the earlier X-flares. Right. If I had to take a guess, I think that more photographers and people ever in the world experienced lights that night because they've been primed to. And so I've just been seeing non-stop photos on socials, and it's cool, but I'm holding off until it's a little bit, later on, and people are posting other things, and I'll come back to it. But that night was insane. Just overheads all night. I was out until maybe about 2:30 in the morning, and I did a couple of different things. So I first went over to Greenwood. This is about 15 minutes west of Ish. There's a reservoir with a bunch of islands and a bunch of like little series of lakes and stuff, and there's a couple different pull-off spots, and it's normally not very popular, but on that night there were dozens of cars that were coming through, which is like the boonies up there. It's like nobody's going out there. It's mostly mining, it's mostly dirt roads, but they were coming out. Not a big deal. There's enough space for everybody there. And I met a buddy of mine who's into photography, and he's doing a lot of like commercial video work, and like he's just into it too. So I got him out there. He got a couple of friends out there, and shared a brew. We watched the lights. It was an awesome night. I did a time lapse of the Corona that was overhead, because we had a Corona most of the night. We had just overhead, and that's that, like, if you look straight up and you see this, like these patterns that like are forming like a tight formation straight overhead. It's called a Corona. During the Northern Lights, it happens when the stuff is strong enough. And I got
an insane Corona shot with my phone.
Yeah, dude.
And I was like, oh my gosh.
We're in the time where like everybody's phones can do all that. When the lights are this good, it doesn't take much. Like you don't have to worry about low light noise, because it's not really that low light anymore.
Right. Yeah. Those 3-second exposures your phone can do. Nail it.
Yeah. Handheld too. I was hand holding the phone all night. No, I did not put it on a tripod. But anyway, so that was cool. All night, shooting lots of stuff. We had a SAR for a little bit. We had like straight east. I was shooting straight east for most of the night. It was all popping off east. For people to understand, when the Northern Lights usually hit, we have to look north, as you would expect with Northern Lights. But when it's strong enough, it pushes latitudes down. And so for most of the night, the ovation was straight over us. So it was happening to the east, ribboning over our heads and going west. And so I was either looking east or west. And when I looked to the north, there were no lights to shoot to the north, because it was just not there. It was literally over our heads. Yeah. So I was shooting east most of the night over the reservoir, looking great, got lots of reflections. I added human element with myself. I did take a portrait of my buddy Trent with the lights behind him with the 28 to 105. It's not incredible, but I was like, I got to try it. Sure. He was cool with that. So I did that. And then when everybody else kind of went home around probably like 1:30 in the morning, and it was still going fine, but we had like a little bit of atmospheric haze. I don't know if it was wildfire stuff or what. It wasn't clouds particularly, but you could see like the bigger stars were a little fuzzy. So sure. Things were like dimming down. So people were leaving. Trent went home. And I was like, there's just one thing I really wanted to do. And it was to get northern lights over a waterfall. And I have other ideas too, but I really wanted to get northern lights over a waterfall. And I've been doing some other stuff with waterfalls lately, but I had this other one that I've been wanting to go to called Warner Falls, which was about 10 minutes from where I was and only about 5 minutes from my house anyway. So not too bad to get over there. And it was just off the highway. If you look up Warner Falls near Palmer, it's really easy to get to. There's not really a hike. It's just off the highway. You just come down the hill a little bit and you can get to it. And so I did that. I parked off the highway a little bit, walked down there, and there it is, this pretty great waterfall. And it was looking to the north, which was a little problematic because everything was east to west, but I held out, and the coronas that were happening were getting really weird, like lightning flashes, like streaking and then like sticking for a second and then fading away and then streaking and sticking and then going away. So I just took tons and tons of shots until one of those like lightning streaks would eventually come over the waterfall, and that happened a few times. So I got northern lights. The lights were still bright enough to kind of light up the ground a little bit. So I got northern lights, fall colors that you could see, waterfall, all together. And that's all the stuff I've been shooting like separately. So to have it all come together was just like a really awesome moment for me to put the work in. I think I shot out there for about an hour. There's not a ton of room to move around this waterfall. So there's like 3 different compositions that I got. I really liked it. I went home around 2:30, and I think I was awake for another hour just like trying to process what I had seen that night. It was absolutely insane. And I think everyone on Earth would agree that did get to see it. So that is all of my Northern Lights shootings in the last week.
Yeah, that's epic. I bet the freaking moon was probably helping you out with the fall killers and stuff too, because that like half moon we had was bright where I was.
Early on in the night, it was doing a little work with the foreground at the reservoir.
Oh, but it was probably down by the time you were at the waterfall. Then
when I was at the waterfall, it was gone. So any light I was getting was either from ambient light on the highway, which I couldn't tell if that was the case, but I was definitely getting a little ambient light from the lights themselves, which were helping.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I've got two other occasions I can talk about, unless you have anything else to add in there.
No, I mean, I think we'll probably want to put some of the photos up in this episode. So anything that you took that you want to share for any of the stories, send them my way. But what you got? Do you want to save do you have portrait stories that you want to save to the next podcast, or do you want to do?
Yeah, sure. I'll save those portions. So I'll talk about one other thing then.
Yeah, cool.
So I met a new photographer. I met someone here who's been photographing for a couple of years. His name is Miles. On Instagram, he's at 906 Bison, I think. And he's got great work. I've seen his work for a little while. He posted a story a couple of weeks ago, like, "Hey, anybody want to shoot fall colors with me?" And I responded, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm down after work, whatever." And so we did that a couple of times. And the last time we went out together, we went out to Yellow Dog Falls after we got off work, just shooting fall colors and just like gorgeous stuff on Yellow Dog. And it was even still a little green there. So where the colors were popping off was like, okay, I'm going to isolate my compositions to find that there. So I got a series of shots with waterfalls, and Yellow Dog is awesome because there's like 4 different sets of nice cascades you can choose from along like a half a mile of trail. So there's tons of space to move around. It's a pretty popular falls, but people are starting to it's like if you wait long enough after midday, people aren't out too much because people come up for fall colors. But got lots of waterfall shots with Miles up and down this trail. And I did take a portrait of him there. Maybe I don't know what I'm yet going to choose for my portrait challenge, but I took a nice one there. And we both just got really nice fall colors over the waterfalls. And other than that, that pretty much completes, other than one other thing that I'll talk about on the next episode, all of my shooting. And it's been a lot. It's been really fulfilling. I'm grateful for my wife who lets me go out so much.
Yeah.
So we have a nice balance there, and it's just been awesome.
Yeah, that's a lot of shooting. I'm definitely jealous. I should probably try to prioritize a little bit more. But yeah, just super epic freaking times for shooting. I'm stoked to see a bunch of the stuff that I haven't seen yet.
I know.
Especially the stuff that'll go in this episode. But for those listening still, lengthy stories, but all good photo stories. We are doing a live episode next week. I don't know what day we're going to shoot it yet, but we're going to be doing our portrait shares. And I have a few submissions. If you'd like to submit a portrait you've taken in like the last handful of weeks, or if you want to shoot one this week, we're going to go over them live and kind of just chit chat about that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I never even got a portrait with the 51.2.
I was going to ask. Yeah.
I was too kind of scattered and busy while I was shooting it. So a lot of my testing with that setup was just work,
right?
Which is unfortunate. But that commute is killing me. I'm in the car 9 hours a week. So
that's so rough.
Yeah, it's brutal. At least it's not 15 anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I think we'll call it. That's a good episode for me.
Yeah.
If you're still listening, we appreciate the heck out of you.
Yeah.
Go ahead and give us a share, give us a review, comment below if you took part in looking at the lights. Tell us your little story about seeing them, if they were good where you were.
That's what I want to hear. I want to hear some light stories from you guys.
I want to find whoever the southernmost listener that got to see the lights still is. That'd be sick.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll have some more stories for next week, and we'll be live, which will be fun. So yeah, that's it. That's all I got for you.
Thanks for listening, guys. Yeah, drop a review if you can. Comment if you're watching YouTube and you see some photos. Thank you for watching. Leave your stories, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.